You've got questions? O'Reilly Auto Parts has answers. Need a pro you can trust? We've got that too. No matter what you need, our professional parts people have the training and expertise to help you do things right. Deep automotive knowledge. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Gas mark 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna cook a meal that's gonna make you mine. I'm turning up the oven, now we're ready to roast. When you touch me, honey, you'll love it the most. Come on and put me in your loving stew.
Welcome to another Britflix.com podcast. My name's Stuart Wright, and today's guest is President, no less, of Birmingham Film Festival, Kevin McDonough. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
My pleasure, my pleasure. We bumped into each other. In fact, we met at the Fright Fest back in August. We're recording this early October, and it was a pleasure to meet you, and I'm glad we got you on the podcast.
Yeah, it was a nice event, the Fright Fest. It was the first time in a long time I've been down to it, but I had a friend showing a film.
What was the film?
It was Shaun Cronin's Bogeyville.
Oh, okay,
which, was really impressive to the point that we're going to be showing it at our own festival in November.
Fantastic.
And it's, going to festivals for watching films and seeing some of the stuff that's out there is great. But having run a film festival now for nearly 10 years, I keep forgetting that the best part of it is going and meeting people. So going down there and making some new friends and some new contacts is like the backbone of it to a certain extent, and it's one of the nicest parts. So yeah, it was cool to go down there, and it was great to meet you, and here we are now. Indeed we are.
So Birmingham Film Festival. Anybody with an ear for regional accents will know that your voice is from the area. So what was the idea that made you want to do a film festival 10 years ago? What was the motivation for you?
I mean, this has become sort of iconic and legendary amongst particularly me and Dean as we tell this story, and I'm sure it's still the truth.
Go on.
We were in production on a feature film of our own, and we'd finished filming about halfway through the production. We finished filming one afternoon, and things were going well. And we were like, "Yeah, this is looking good. So what's the plan? Where are we going to go with it when we're done?" Because we didn't have a sales strategy, we had no distribution deal lined up, and so we're thinking about all the places to go and what we could do. And then we started to really get annoyed at the fact that there wasn't anywhere in our own city that we could showcase and premiere the film. So wouldn't it be great if there was a film festival? And then conversation, yeah, you could do this, you could do that. Oh, it'd be brilliant. We could hold it here. And the idea over the space of about an hour sort of snowballed into this huge idea of what it could be. And so we finished our drinks and we literally walked around the corner to where we knew there was a small independent cinema. And we asked them, could we put on a film festival? We're thinking maybe 3 days, 2.5 days, whatever. Really small. We just want to try it out. And they said, yeah, sure, we're available. You can hire the venue. Just let us know what dates. And so we quickly scrambled there and then and picked a date it was almost a year away, because I knew we needed prep time. We couldn't put this together in 3 or 4 months. Plus we needed time for films to be submitted and figure out what we were going to do. So we said, well, probably this time next year. And so they booked us in. They told us how much it was going to cost us. We were like, this is serious now. We're spending money on this. We went home. We each took on a job of setting up a website, a Facebook page, and the backbone of the infrastructure, which is Film Freeway, where the films are submitted to the festival. And about 48 hours later, we'd done everything. And by the end of the week, we were live and open for submissions. We'd created a logo, we'd got the domain, and everything was live. And it was like, oh, wow, we just made a film festival. How easy was that? And then we had to run the thing. And so it was created in, like I say, in the space of 5 or 6 days. And then we had to spend the rest of the year putting it together and realising what a mammoth task it was. And I think that might be one of the reasons no one else had done it.
Yeah. Because it's surprising to think that only 10 years ago, is a film festival established, with the banner of Birmingham Film Festival, being the second city, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, the reason we picked November was I had an inkling in the back of my mind of a previous festival that had been running in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm pretty sure that was November. So maybe thinking we needed some sort of continuity between, the old school. And I think that had stopped in the early 2000s. I mean, the last time I'd been to it was about 2002. But that was more of a curated collection of films of certain genres or themes or from filmmakers. And it wasn't really what we were looking to do, which was a platform for particularly independent creatives, locally based, to get their film onto the big screen. And so we built the festival that we needed.
Yeah.
And it turned out loads of other people needed it as well.
So in that sense then, I'm thinking about networking. Did you sort of draw out sort of Birmingham and West Midlands filmmakers out the woodwork then with the presence of your festival?
Not so much draw them out of the woodwork, but put them in the same room. There were so many filmmakers within a stone's throw of where we were, like literally from where I live. I was not aware that they were about. I mean, it got to the point I thought maybe I was the only person in the city making a movie. Everyone else had got a real job.
Yeah.
But it seemed to just start bringing everyone together and putting them in the same room, and that's opened opportunities even more. So not just for us, but for everybody, because people are able to connect and collaborate and sympathise with each other. And so it turned out that there was, because one of our fears is the reason there isn't a film festival is there's no demand for it. And it was made pretty clear to us within about 2 months that there was definitely both a need and a want for a film festival in the city, because the film community came out in absolute droves to support us. And that's the reason not only did it continue, but it's grown every year, because people come and support it and get involved and share their work. And I joked about how quickly we set the thing up. At the end of the day, what we're doing in terms of mechanics is relatively straightforward. Date, venue, and then there's some backroom sort of work going on to make it all come together, which isn't easy, but it's not that doesn't make a festival if you haven't got people contributing with their films and their work and their craft and their passion, which ultimately is what the film festival really thrives on.
Do you have a memory of showing a film in the early days where you can? I mean, I'm sure the minute you opened the doors and put your first film on, it felt like it. But was there any film that you put on that made you feel like, hold on a minute, we're going somewhere here?
There's been a couple over the last, particularly the last few years.
Yeah.
The one, and we still talk about. You could ask Dean about it as well. He'd say the same thing. It's probably about 6 years ago now, and it was a Polish movie, and it was like a cross between sort of a little bit of Harry Potter and Narnia, and a little bit Pan's Labyrinth, and a little bit of that sort of dark fantasy, but it was like a heartwarming story about a kid coming to terms with a bit of loss and the fantasy world that he stepped. You have bits of where the wild things are, all of that sort of classic, and it looked beautiful, and it was a beautifully told story. And we all just know that if it had been in the English language, it would have been a huge hit. And the fact that we got to show that film and get an audience to it is something we're incredibly proud of. And the fact that a filmmaker who had been able to create something of such a high caliber wanted to put it on our screen meant that we must be doing something right. I mean, we've had some films come through the doors that have gone on to do quite well. We had a documentary called 72 Cows, which went on to win the Oscar. We had a movie last year called One Note Man, which got BAFTA shortlisted and Oscar longlisted.
Oh, wow.
So every year we're getting to see more and more of the sort of the talent that's out there, and we're seeing careers and talent grow. And there are filmmakers coming back every year, and we're seeing their films get better and better, and just their scope increasing. And then when we get somebody new coming who's made a film for £300 and they shot it on a weekend, we're still excited about that, because, hey, come on in, because this can work, this can help. And it's always nice to think that even in the tiniest of ways, we've contributed to someone's story in a positive way and sort of helped champion them. And even if we've only helped them reach 1 or 2 new audience members, it's something, because audience is what it's all about.
It's interesting, going back to what you're saying about networking and Birmingham and West Midlands filmmakers finding each other. I think that, because, you know, anyone that likes films will go to the cinema, but the cinema is very much a kind of go in and go home experience, whereas that's one of the big differences between going to see a festival. It's almost like people are preconditioned to speak to strangers, because, you know, when you leave in a cinema, you don't usually go, "How was that film?" Because they usually look at it like you got 2 heads. But if you do that at a festival, that's a reason to start talking. I think that's a big difference. If people aren't regulars to film festivals, that's a big part of it, isn't it? That you're going to grow your own community, whether you like it or not, if you attend one.
Well, 100%. I mean, one of the reasons we've stuck to our guns of keeping our event in a single location is to encourage people to hang around afterwards, speak to each other, and make it feel that the festival is more than just watching the film. I mean, it is. A lot of big festivals in other cities have multiple screens and multiple venues, and even Fright Fest does it, but they're within Leicester Square.
Yeah.
And there's a hub within the pub that everyone goes to. And I think having that communal space afterwards, very much like going to the cinema and watching a film with an audience, is a communal experience.
Yeah.
With a festival, you've got people who've got a much deeper passion for the craft of filmmaking and desire to do it. So continuing that communal space and allowing them to get together, I think people maybe they didn't realise it. I didn't when I first started networking and going to festivals. You want to be in a room with that people. I mean, that's why the Q&As are so popular. Every year, we've increased the amount of time we give the filmmakers to speak about their films, because they want to talk. They want to talk to each other. They want to share. They want to ask questions. So it's really important that we can continue to give people that opportunity, because filmmakers will take every second they can to talk to each other about film.
So tell us, what is your venue, and what is it? What's exciting about it as a place to see film for you?
So our venue now is Millennium Point, which was built as part of one of the big Millennium projects, like the Millennium Dome and the Millennium Centre in Cardiff. And it was the home of Birmingham's first IMAX screen. Mm-hmm. And it's not IMAX anymore. The projection system's out, but the screen is still there. So I'm pretty sure we have the largest screen for any independent film festival probably in the world, because it's about 5 stories high.
Oh my goodness.
If you've got your name, the title of your film pops up, I'm pretty sure those letters are about the same size as the Hollywood sign. It is huge. And there is something about just having those films thrown up on that wall that creates such an atmosphere. And we've had films shot by kids on their phones, and we've put it up on that big screen, and it looks incredible. And for some of them, it's the first time not only they've seen their film, but it's definitely the first time it's been in a cinema in front of an audience. And you can feel the intake of breath as they sort of gasp at their film going on. And it's such a buzz to give that to people, to be able to be there when they experience seeing their work on that screen, and particularly when it's their name comes up. It still gives us a bit of a buzz and a tingle, because I remember what it felt like for me when I first saw it.
And watching lots of films as part of the selection process is a job in of itself, and it sort of surpasses the sort of usual thing of like someone who might watch a lot of films because they like film. You're actually watching it because you're going, is this, well, A, do I like it? Is this for us? Can I get it? So how do you maintain your critical faculties as to what even makes a good film when you're having to sort of consume so many, but also consuming it under the auspices of trying to program a film festival?
I mean, our big advantage is we have the full year to watch the films. We don't sit down and watch them at the end in a clump. We watch the films pretty much as they're coming in, so our eyes are fairly fresh and our opinion is fresh, and we're never tired. But the first thing is just your gut reaction. Did you enjoy it? And if whatever that story might be, whether it's a comedy or a dark tragedy, if you engage with something and by the end of it, you're still with it and you still you wanted to see the outcome, whatever it might be, that's a huge, big green flag, that is. That means that filmmaker has reached and got you and they've connected with you. So as cliched as it is, it's always story first, like story and characters. Have we connected? And then beyond that, then we have more of a critical eye and we look at areas in which the film may have excelled or really exceeded sort of not expectation, but just sort of shown some real proficiency in their craft. The score, the performances, production design. I mean, some stuff just leaps off the screen at you. You can see the craft and the skill that's gone into it. But then sometimes there have been films which haven't quite, underwhelming would be a polite term.
Yeah.
But you can see the craft in some areas that is phenomenal. And we sometimes get a bit of criticism for that when people see a film on the screen. They go, why did you pick that? That wasn't a very good film. And we're like, yeah, but did you hear the sound? Did you hear the score? Did you hear the production, the sound design of it? Or look at that production design on that. So sometimes we aren't showing films that have as a whole worked, but the filmmakers and their crew and their team have shown some real talent and skill in a certain area. And we want to acknowledge that. First few years, it was tough. We made the mistake year one of just that there were 4 of us on the jury panel that first year.
Yeah.
And we just listed all the films we liked. And we were like, this is great. Look at that. I think we were showing like 50 films that first year, if that, maybe less, maybe 40. And so we all picked, the 10 films that we like, 12 films, and we checked what was what. And then it was like, okay, which one of these films has got the best production design? Oh, I don't know. Actually, there's a film there that wasn't very good, but have you seen the sets that they built? And so we had to sort of change our thinking a little bit and be both objective and subjective with when we're looking at the films. And I think it's just become a bit of an instinct now that I'm listening with one ear for those characters and the story, and with the other ear I'm paying attention to some of the other elements of it. One eye, it's like one eye on one thing, one eye on the other. And I think that just comes with having, this now being the 9th edition of it that I've done.
Brilliant. Well, look, I'll put links in the show notes and details as to when the festival is, when the podcast goes out. But, man, congratulations for maintaining it this long. I mean, it's interesting. It's really surprising to think that it came out of 6 days of effort and then the challenge then began, as it were.
It's also amazing that if you've ever met me and Dean, it's amazing that not only do we get to run it, but they've let us keep running it. I mean, how we get away with this every year is a miracle.
Without further ado, we're going to move into 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. You've given me 3 titles that represent fond memories for you in terms of your film watching life. And every time we hear this sound, that will denote 5 minutes are up and it's time to move on to the next title. Does that make sense?
Crystal clear.
Okay. I'm going to do the films in the order you gave them me, yeah? Okay. So first off out the gate is Edgar Wright's Shaun of the Dead. Tell me more. Where does this fit in your film watching life? So
all of the films that I've picked have had an influence on my career as well as anything. And Shaun of the Dead was, I think, a bit of a resurgence for British filmmaking and, British humour. And it felt the most, sort of the most grounded in terms of high concept British movie because it was so British. And it really stuck with me as a way of being able to tell film stories that were outlandish and fun and exciting, but without having to break away from, my surroundings and my upbringing. And I remember when I first saw it, just howling at it because it resonated.
Picture this. You're not just fixing cars, you're living your passion every day. At Cox, you'll work on a diverse range of automobiles. Surrounded by a team of friendly, like-minded individuals, you'll enjoy great pay and benefits. Ready to make this a reality? At Cox, we're recruiting auto and diesel techs to join our Mannheim and Fleet Services teams. Learn, grow, and fine-tune your career as a technician at Cox. Find out more at cox.career/autotech.
What's the easiest choice you can make? Window instead of middle seat? Picking a vendor who sends a great gift basket? Outsourcing business tasks you hate? What about selling with Shopify? Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/try.
Zaxby's Sensation Salad is so much more than a plain old salad. It's a salad, which begs the question, at what point does a salad stop being a salad and become a salad? Is it when you add Zaxby's fried chicken to it? Crunchy wontons? Asian slaw? Citrus vinaigrette? Teriyaki glaze? Sweet and spicy sauce? Or is it when you top it all with a handmade perfectly fried egg roll? Without a doubt, the egg roll. The Sensation Salad, only at Zaxby's.
Hated so much, and I'm not a huge horror fan, but the way Shaun of the Dead did horror was the most British thing ever, that it kind of brought me back into, to a certain extent, liking horror.
Mm-hmm.
But it was actually when the DVD came out that it had a huge impact on me.
Okay.
Because at that point, I was in the middle of directing my first ever movie. And we'd started earlier in 2004.
What was that called, your first ever movie?
It was called The Idol of Evil. Okay. And I encourage people not to search it and not to check it out. But we got into the end of the year, sort of the November, December, and it was getting cold and grim. And I had Shaun of the Dead on DVD, and the production was going just down the pan. And I watched Shaun of the Dead, and I watched the behind the scenes. And I was watching this crew, this relatively small crew, pitch together and make stuff happen. And there was like a camaraderie to it. And I realised that everyone on my team helped me make my film had that same mentality. They were on my side. And it re-energized me, and it got me back into a mindset of, look, this is what making low-budget British films is all about. The chaos and the trouble and the struggle isn't a bad thing. It's what you're supposed to have. And it meant I just embraced the fact our film was held together with, elastic bands and sellotape. And, there are special effects made out of old bags of like sausages and things like that. And like some of the cheesy methods we used to get it over the line. And some of the terrible pre-digital animation that we put in, like, it's quite laughable. But Shaun of the Dead got me through it, and I've always associated Shaun of the Dead with that sort of British can-do spirit for film, and yeah, not taking the whole thing so seriously in the same way it doesn't within the story. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a zombie movie about going down the shops and the pub. And it's been copied, and people have attempted since to do it, but I think that trio, that Edgar Wright, Pegg, and Nick Frost, they just had the British zeitgeist, and I was the right age for it. I was 23, 24. I'd loved space when I was younger, when that had been on like in the late 90s. So yeah, Shaun of the Dead very much felt like where I was headed, and also where I was at that point. And yeah, the journey of Shaun of the Dead was very much what I felt. But I think,
and I know it was typically British in terms of what was the content, but actually, what I think made it different is that it felt like it was trying to be a movie for the cinemas. It didn't feel like it was being like the kind of underdog British, the kind of plucky British. You
it
could see yourself.
It doesn't hold back in its ambition.
Yes.
And I think that's even more true with Hot Fuzz. Hot Fuzz is the British remake of Beverly Hills Cop. It really, policeman out of his depth in a town that doesn't have the same attitude towards crime as he does. And, there's corruption at every turn and no one's listening to him. And the other coppers, again, that sort of British mentality towards it where we can do what we want. We can achieve to those levels, but we're also, going to get smacked in the face by a vinyl record collection. And it's...
Given it was, you kind of found this film as you were rewatching this film on DVD as you were trying to make your first film. Did any of it influence the film directly?
Oh, I think there's a couple of bits that we then put in the film that are, it's us trying to do something that is sort of Shaun of the Dead-esque. We, as wasn't remotely comedic.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I'd already ripped off enough other movies to try and put something of Shaun of the Dead in there. But you couldn't help but be influenced by Edgar Wright at that point if you were a British film nut.
Yeah.
He was an idol. He basically rewritten the book on how to make British movies for that, at least at that time.
Well, look, our first 5 minutes are up. For your second choice, we are going back to 1987 for Timothy Dalton's role as James Bond in The Living Daylights. Do you want to tell us where this fits in with your film memories, where you saw this, who you saw it with, that kind of thing?
So this wasn't the first Bond film I'd seen because Bond had been on TV and this, that, and the other. And I'm 87 when this comes out. In the July or August, I'm 6 years old.
Okay.
And I was very fortunate that I have family that live in Southern California, just outside Los Angeles. And we took a family trip to go and see my aunt and my uncle who live in California.
Okay.
And we decided we're going to go to the cinema one night and we are going to go and watch The Living Daylights. And so my first James Bond experience was sitting in a giant Cadillac watching it at a drive-in. So as a 6-year-old seeing, and even to this day, I can remember that I'd followed the plot enough. I knew that he was rescuing this girl and they were being chased by the bad guys. And, some of the details might have gone over my head, but that entire movie, just on that big screen, sitting in that car in warm Californian summer evening, was just a mind-blowing experience. And it was the first time I think cinema had sort of had an impact on me that was different than watching it on television. It was the first time I think I've realised seeing something on a big screen was an experience, to the point where I think for probably the next 6 or 7 weeks, I wanted to be a stuntman. So there was something about, I knew it was a movie. I knew it wasn't real, but there was something about that action adventure that just resonated with me. And then obviously you go and watch all the other Bond movies and you realise Timothy Dalton's still the best. He's got the best car out of all the cars he's ever had. That V8 is just absolutely stunning. And again, it was something that fed into my interest in filmmaking, because The Living Daylights is like the 25th anniversary of James Bond's on the big screen. And so there were loads of, or at least there was lots of stuff around talking about how it was the 25th. And there was a documentary on ITV that was the history of James Bond. And so having seen this one on the big screen and having a vague understanding of, having seen things like Octopussy and A View to a Kill on TV, to then sit and see the whole history of Bond up until 1987, it sort of opened my eyes and the world of James Bond to me. But it was very much talking about the filmmaking process of it, and particularly the stunt in Gibraltar when he drives the Land Rover off the cliff. And that was my first sort of inkling into the filmmaking process, that where telling stories on the big screen especially was something I was interested in. And so that Bond movie has always just stuck with it. Still to this day is my favourite James Bond movie. I think there's just enough of everything. There's the car chase homage to Goldfinger, where it's like the updated, the blades are turned into lasers and the machine guns turned into rockets, and the screen comes up the back. He's just got bulletproof. All of it. The music's great, everything, and it's a real sort of Cold War era espionage thriller that ends in Afghanistan, and he's running across the roof. Everything about it just sort of resonated with me, and then learning more and building on that as a filmmaker myself was, it all sort of stems from that experience of seeing a movie on the big screen and feeling that impact and that the difference between that at 6 from watching a film at home on TV and seeing it and you can't really get much better than watching it on a drive-in.
I was going to say, can you walk us through what vague memories you might have of going to a drive-in in Southern California? What do you remember of the experience of just being at a drive-in? I'm yet to experience it.
I've done it in my entire life. I've done it twice because we went to visit the family again about 4 years later, and again went to the drive-in. Yeah. And that time we watched Prince of Thieves.
Okay.
Another film which I became obsessed with the production of and wanted to know how it was made more than the film itself. But it was literally old school. Like nowadays, I'm sure if they still exist, there'd be all sorts of clever tech. But you pulled up next to into a parking spot. It was a gravel parking spot, but there'll be a pole. And on that pole will be a speaker on basically a stereo wire that you bring into the car so you can hear the audio.
Wow.
And it's tinny as that.
Finish your thought. Finish your thought.
On either side.
Go on, sorry.
I can't remember if there was one either side, but it was, and how bad it was. But it didn't affect my understanding of it, my enjoyment of it. When we went back 4 years later, whatever it was, 1991, they changed it, and instead of having the box with a speaker in it, there was a cable that you stuck against your windscreen, and you tuned your radio into a radio frequency that was broadcasting the audio. So the sound was then coming through your car speakers. So that was a vast improvement. I think in the 35 years since I did that, if drive-ins still exist, they've probably moved on in technology.
Right then. Final choice. We're going to jump back another couple of years, but stay in the 80s to 1983 to one of the Star Wars franchise, Return of the Jedi. Where does this fit in your? So if you were 6 in 87, then you weren't going to the cinema to see this. So where are you seeing Return of the Jedi?
I'm probably seeing Return of the Jedi, which isn't even my favourite of the original trilogy. I'm seeing that at home on video, but I remember the excitement of seeing that conclusion, and for the first time ever, and the big space battle at the end, and the Ewoks, and to the point where I can't drive down through a country road that's got loads of trees next to me without thinking that that's a perfect place to reshoot the speeder bike scene. Jedi was having seen the other two films on TV and video as well, and I didn't get to see them on the big screen until like 97. Jedi felt like the big finale of that whole epic journey, and it was just something that, and I think for most kids up until about the age of 14, Jedi's your favourite, and it probably was mine for the longest of time. But again, what really excited me was we'd recorded it off TV in about 1980, maybe 88, 89. And they played, before they showed it, they played a 30-minute making of.
Oh, really?
So anytime I wanted to watch Jedi, I'd have a 30-minute making of beforehand. So I always associated Jedi with how they made Return of the Jedi. Not so much the other two. I've obviously subsequently, I have read every single book about the making of the Star Wars trilogy. I'm not a huge fan of the lore and the history and all of that, but I really do dive deep into how they made the films. And Jedi was the first deep dive I ever did into the making of a film. into how the Jabba suit was built, the fact that I knew there were 5 guys in there and how they were operating it, a guy in the tail and one guy on each arm. Every detail about it was more interesting to me than the in-world story, and that formed the backbone of my desire to make those types of films. I think looking back on my career, I really would have enjoyed being a filmmaker in the early 80s where you had to make those things. And I think even today, I get a real buzz out of practical effects. We've just finished a really low budget movie about an Egyptian mummy coming back and attacking people. It's a low budget horror movie. Mm-hmm. And I was so desperate to do as much practical as possible. We did a miniature force perspective explosion. And as we were setting it up, I'm sitting at the back thinking, this is just like Jabba's sail barge. Look at this. I am finally realizing my dream of shooting a miniature and blowing it up and capturing that moment on camera and creating the facade of storytelling, which I think as a filmmaker is my biggest passion. The illusion of it, the making people think they've seen something that is impossible, which is probably why I'm not a huge fan of digital effects stuff. Not there's anything against it. I think some of it's amazing. But in terms of getting my hands dirty and doing it myself, oh yeah, I'll build it and paint it and put it at an angle where you can only see 2 sides before we blow it up at 120 frames a second.
So you've just told me an anecdote there of something you've done now that was something that you first saw being done in a making of 30 odd years ago that sort of stuck with you.
100%. Like,
wow, that's amazing.
It's always been in the back of my mind, those techniques, and again, I've always got. I can still watch a film and enjoy it for the story, and that's proved by the fact that we still do that for the festival. But if I can deep dive into it and find out how they made it, it gives me another layer and another level of enjoyment for a film, knowing that the effort that they went to and the craft and the cleverness of having to do stuff practically. I mean, my bookshelves are full of how films were made, books rather than novelizations or fantasy novels or anything like that. It's all making of, because I just admire the craft of filmmaking, as I say, that the creation of that facade of reality. And again, that's probably what ultimately drove me. Well, it's not what drove me to set up a film festival, but it's the reason I keep doing it, that I love the process of making the films and putting them on the big screen and in front of people and tricking them in the nicest possible way into believing what's just happened is reality, and helping as many people as possible to share their version that they've created of that. Yeah, it is my passion. The making of films is a huge passion for me.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for sharing those stories for your 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. I'll just relist them. Then we had Shaun of the Dead from 2004, Living Daylights from 1987, and Return of the Jedi from 1983. You said at the outset, so Film Freeway is the way people can apply to you if they're looking to submit films for Birmingham Film Festival in the future, yeah?
Yeah, it's a really good platform for both film festivals and filmmakers. Back in the day when I first started submitting films to festivals, you'd have to go to every website, fill in all your details, fill in your synopsis. Film Freeway came along. I mean, there were a few others, but Film Freeway has definitely sort of taken the mantle of champion. You put all that information in once, and then when you see our festival and you see how good it is and our amazing reviews that we get, because everyone seems to enjoy what they do, you can submit to us. And we're an incredibly cost-effective festival. We're very, very cheap to submit early doors. I mean, if you want to submit your feature film with like 4 days to go, then it can be a little bit pricey. So maybe wait till next year is what we say. But then we also show the films for free. You don't have to pay to attend any of the screenings of any of the films at the Birmingham Film Festival. We're there to get an audience in front of some incredible work made by some incredible people. So yeah, we want people in there, and we're trying to make it as accessible as possible and support as many people as we can. It's the festival I wish existed when I was 21, 22, watching Shaun of the Dead on DVD.
Well, sounds like you're doing God's work. So congratulations on that front. And thanks again for sharing it. And it just gives me to say thank you very much for coming on the Britflix podcast.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having us, Stuart.
Come on and put me in a loving shoe and let me rock you like you want me to, 'cause now the boots are clean and we've had our fill. You put on the coat and I'll get the bill. This is a love story and I'm singing to you. Me and my baby loving in the rockin' stew. Come on and put me in a loving stew. Let me rock you like you want me to,
Picture this. You're not just fixing cars, you're living your passion every day. At Cox, you'll work on a diverse range of automobiles. Surrounded by a team of friendly, like-minded individuals, you'll enjoy great pay and benefits. Ready to make this a reality? At Cox, we're recruiting auto and diesel techs to join our Mannheim and Fleet Services teams. Learn, grow, and fine-tune your career as a technician at Cox. Find out more at cox.career/autotech.
If you're a facilities manager at a warehouse and your HVAC system goes down, it can turn up the heat, literally. But don't sweat it, Grainger has you covered. Grainger offers over 1 million industrial-grade products for all your operations, including warehouse HVAC maintenance. And even better, they offer access to experts and fast delivery, so you and your warehouse can both keep your cool. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.